Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, can hear you. Can you doing well?
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to know. So,
Hi, good evening.
good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Um, so for I have an update before we start work. This is supposed to be a 6 weeks, actually 5 weeks program with a bonus of 1 week for career, maybe mini interviews and all of that. But on the 6th week, we're supposed to have the class. I have an engagement, so which means I will most likely not be around that week. So I'm merging week 4 and week 5 into a single class. So today, I tried a bit to merge them, but my website is not putting up. The platform is not putting up together. So I will still use the platform, but just in case you guys are working around or you're like maybe playing around the platform, and then you notice that something strange is happening there, right? You can see like it's just messed up. That's totally fine. I'm still working on it. So probably before the end of today, I should have fixed that. All right. Uh, let's start today's class. All right, so today we'll be talking about PM tool stack. We've already spoken about a few of them when we were talking about analytics. We also mentioned a few of them in previous classes because we cannot necessarily discuss them without having to mention them really. So, but today we'll try as much as possible to discuss overall. At the same time, go into a bit of what's the word now? A bit of practical assessment. So I'll show you what it looks like, what we probably do if you find yourself in a place where you are the scrum master. I mean, your company does not have a separate scrum master. So which means you are the one handling the team, managing the day to day. Hopefully today's class will not be as long as other class would be. All right, so first off, I feel like it is important for me to tell you that tools are not what makes us a better PM. Last week we looked through multiple tools. Yeah, I showed you guys how post.org works. I showed you guys how Amplitude also works. We played around it. We even did a bit of practical where I was showing you, we did a practical A/B testing where we saw two different UI, even though both users are actually accessing the same website at the same time. And I showed you practically how I did that in class. All right, so that in case you get to meet yourself in that kind of shoe, uh, you can know what to expect. And I remember I keep saying this in class. Um, I can't teach you everything. You have to practice some of the things that we learn. So if I teach you 1/10, like your main goal is to actually learn the rest of the 15 or 16, such that when I see you, I want to learn from you. That's the way it should be. All right. So, as I said, tools really don't make a better PM. The thinking does, our mindset. And that's why, as much as I don't want to teach you guys theory, I try as much as possible to go into the nitty gritties, like the theoretical parts and all of that, right? I go into it as much as possible so that you understand the thinking behind the tool, right? Yesterday, on Friday, is it Friday? When I was teaching you guys about feature flags and all of that, I mentioned that a couple of times people just want to do feature flag because they want to do it. They want to do A/B testing because everybody say product manager should be doing A/B testing, right? If there's no hypothesis, then there's nothing to test, right? We discussed all of this. So which means if you join a company, you might not even do A/B testing for the rest of your career. I mentioned to you guys that I didn't have to do A/B testing at all until I got to this my current company. And before now, that's like almost 3 years of my experience, or sorry, 4 years of my experience as a product manager before got to this current company where I work, where I actually did try to do A/B testing for the first time. But before this work came to me, right, I initially had the experience with the tools. I've walked around them. I knew how it worked. I had watched plenty YouTube videos and many like that. So my call to you before we start talking about the tools is that tools in themselves are not necessarily what makes a great product. It is the product manager that makes a great product and the team, definitely. So when they say, okay, who thought about this idea? Is a product manager. I love their buttons, I love their colors, blah blah blah. Yes, there's an input from the designer and everybody, but at the end of the day, your ability to iterate, your ability to decide that this is the direction we're going is what makes you a great product manager, not the tools at the end of the day. And I would again say this, that just analytics alone, I gave you guys up to 6 or 7 tools that you can, right? I told you I'm not one of those teachers that will come and tell you go and use the tools. I showed you how to use 2 of them, right? So, which means eventually you might get to a company today and they're not using that tools at all. But one thing will stick with you, that, okay, now you know that 3 people. I think I also broke it down to you as well that feature flag does not necessarily mean A and B, right? You can do A/B testing and it's not just 2 different cohorts or 2 different parts. Like there might be 4. You can have A, B, C, D, E, F. We did a practical example of that also in the last class. So my point being that you might go to company A and company A is using these tools, and you get to company B and they are using it too. And then you're like, oh, me, I've not used this tool before, so because of that, they should sack you. No, it shouldn't be the case. So make sure that you learn as much as possible. And the more the tools you learn, the more your understanding, the more your knowledge, and the more valuable you are to the company. So based on the company's need, you can advise them, right? I'll show you guys an example in the last class on analytics. On post.org, you can basically you can decide, okay, 30% of my user base, I want them to see this. Another 30%, I want them to see this. Another 30%, I want them to see this. Post.org does not allow you to customize, oh, okay, there's another 10%, I don't want to see anything, right? But for Amplitude allows you to even leave those 10% that will not see anything. Although they would show you error that, Baba, if you leave it, these people will not see anything, right? So, but at the end of the day, this knowledge helps you. So if your company wants tomorrow to like decide which tools to go for, you can, and your company is saying, no, we want some users to not even see anything at all. You can say, oh, okay, I think Amplitude can do that, right? Even though maybe they have post.org or user pilot or many of those tools at the end of the day. Like I said, currently I've only used 2 of those tools in my career, in my entire career, right? Like in a company that I've worked, right? Yeah, 3 with Metabase. But eventually, I've learned nothing less than 8 of them. Post.org, I got to learn it in the last cohort of training I did. And, it goes like that. So please, I'm calling us into that reality that, sorry, you need to learn, self-learn, at the same time, understand that those tools are just tools, right? And this would shift your mind from, oh, I've never used it before, to, oh, what's there to use, right? At the end of the day. All right. So usually, the entire things that we do as product managers are broken down into 5 major parts. The first part is project and issue tracking. This is basically the action of you being able to track what Mr. A or Mr. B or your designer or your developer or whoever it is you're working with are doing part time. And then being able to say, okay, hey, they're almost done. Oh, they are done, blah, blah, tracking basically how far are we on the project? How far have we gone? And many more like that. And then you have product discovery and road mapping. I already explained what product discovery is. Product discovery is that process where you're trying to learn about the product, about what you want to build. about what is possible and what is not possible. Roadmap is now you've learned it. Now you have to plan for, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, based on the timeline. Basically, plan the timeline and points in the timeline where you have deliverables that you deliver, right? And then the third one is analytics and experimentation. So now your product is ready. I need to know how is my product doing, right? Also, I need to be able to experiment. And we gave an example where Adiola said, "Oh, she loves the red color instead of the green on my website." I was like, "Oh, okay." So the experiment is we need to be sure which color goes for what, right? At the end of the day, give me a minute, please, guys. I want to be sure that this guy finished what I told it to do. All right, so at the end of the day, I want to be sure that regardless of the case, right? This work. You don't have access to it. Okay. All right, regardless of the case, I'm able to know which users, what is the behavior of the user on this particular end, and then what's the behavior of the user on the particular end, and then I can make inference on assumptions based on the data that I've seen. User research and feedback. How do I collect feedback from the user at the end of the day? And then we have the final one, which is communication and documentation, right? So now everything that is going on, I'll give you an example. Currently, we are doing an M&A, which basically means a merger and acquisition, merging one company that we acquired to our company now, and the same vice versa. And because when you have a lot of things like that are very, very capital intensive, there's pressure everywhere. The investors are pressuring the CEO is pressuring the directors are pressuring everybody. And there's plenty meetings. There's just a lot of meetings. And before you know it, there's misalignment, right? Director believes that this is where you're going. Product manager is going another direction, and all of that could occur. So how do we ensure that we're able to make sure that everybody aligns at the same point eventually, regardless of how many people are working on the same project, right? So I'll be picking 1, 2 in each of these 3, and I'll be using it to probably explain what this looks like to you guys. Unfortunately, I was trying to seed in as much data into my Jira before class starts, but I was unable to convert this board I mistakenly created it as a Kanban view. So I'm unable to actually convert it to, lovely. I was able to convert it to sprint, what do they call it now? To sprint board. So you can't see, I can't create sprint on it, but I'll try as much as possible to at least show you how these things work eventually. All right. See. In it, still can't see it. Oof. All right. So we're going to start with Jira. I'm sure some of us have heard about Jira. You've heard Jira a lot, maybe Trello and all of that. So I'm going to start with that and show you how ideally it should work. But this does not always translate to what the reality is. For example, let me give you a sneak peek. If I go to this platform now, right, you can see that I'm also using a Jira board at the end of the day. So every product manager has a board, one way or the other. Actually, every team has a board where they manage things. Now, managing your board can be different from another. In this case, I have Kamsi. Kamsi is I'm calling Kamsi like my company that I'm building, right? Or my team. And then we have a lot of things to do. So there is features that we want to build, right? Those features are often called epics. I've told you how to write requirements for epics and everything. So I'm just teaching you how to create epics now. So usually when you come to this create here, it asks you what are you trying to create. At the end of the day, are you trying to create a task or an epic or a story or a feature or a bug? We've spoken a bit about this. I told you that epics are basically like your in most cases like your feature, right? Most cases. This feature as a type is not something that is common, right? But epics usually we use it to represent that big item that you want to get done. And then those epics are now broken down into user stories, and then that user story is broken down into tasks. In the case of, for example, this epic, which is like the big thing that you want to work on, authentication and user management, right? Inside authentication and user management, we now have, sign up with email and password, email and password login, Google OAuth login, session management persistence. You have all these user stories. Now, each of these user stories will now have their own sub items. Now, sub items could be backend tasks. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I've forgotten that I'm using my. Let me switch to my other internet. Yeah. Can you hear me now, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So so you have that epic, and then this epic is connected to user stories and user stories depending on your company's board. User story might be technical. You might have technical user stories. You might have normal user stories, right? Regardless, they are user stories, right? Technical user stories are user stories that you don't need as a user because they are very technical. Can be infrastructure related, right? So they are oftentimes not something that is affecting the user itself. So we call them technical story. That's why we don't call them user stories at the end of the day. All right, so you have that. This is also another feature, which is multi-tenant system. For multi-tenant systems, we have these stacks that we've created, and each of these stacks or stories for auto create tenant on sign up. Say as a user, I want to be able to blah 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 acceptance criteria. I've explained this to you guys in a previous class, how to document all of this. But I'm just showing you the tools now. So you have the epics and then the user stories, and then the user stories have their subtasks that they are connected to. So this subtask means that for this particular task, Bayo can take this and Adiola can take this, and both of them can work together on making sure that this actually come out. And then we can say, okay, at the end of the day, we are done with auto create tenant on sign up. And then we'll do the same thing like this for everything. And then once we are done, we can do an announcement that our multi-tenant system is ready, right? So usually this is the idea. Now, I've explained the idea of epics, user stories, and then subtasks. However, there's also something on this board that we call, I wish I have a sprint board, honestly. Give me a minute. Let me see if I can get a sprint. Oof. Okay. I'm still fighting with the AI, so hopefully we'll be able to actually get it done. All right, so we have something called a sprint board. So when you start a sprint, all your tasks are visible on a board, and then you can see how these things are moving. Usually, I advise all the PMs that work under me or that I mentor that they should keep their statuses, which you call stage, right? Keep it as short as possible if you can help it. But if your team is more complex, where you don't just have a QA, you have like a software developer in test. So which means you have automation. You can add another layer here. But ideally, to do is where all the tasks start. When you start a sprint, everybody stacks probably is in to do. And then from to do, when they are ready to work on it, they move it to in progress and they work on it. Once they are done, they move that ticket to PR review. Now, PR review is also something I will teach you guys today. PR means pull request. Now, pull requests is your developer. Okay, I'll talk about Git. But yeah, they do a pull request, and the idea of PR review is that every other developer, for example, if it's a design, other designers will review the design to ensure that it works with the common library. So what do we call common library? Imagine a company like Meta, for example. I don't know if any of us have actually been on this Meta Business Manager before. Aha. So we have Meta Business Manager. In this Meta Business Manager, well, we have different products inside of it. We have the ad manager, we have the creators market space, we have the inbox, we have insights, we have monetization. These are different products that is handled by different team and different products managers. But if I click on any of them, the UI looks the same. Like they look different, they look similar. I can know that I'm still in Meta dashboard. Why is this very important? Why is this possible? It's because Meta itself has something we call a common library. Now, this common library defines what buttons will look like, what icons will look like. We call them an icon pack. All the icons they have would be in this place. And that's why you notice if WhatsApp, if Meta does like a icon change, it will change on all of their products. The same with Google, the same with Apple, right? Because they have like something we call an icon pack. They have tool pack as well. They have, for example, Meta has, if I zoom this on, right? Meta has like, you see this, what do they call it in design again? This angle that you're seeing here, right? Is the same for any rectangle that you find on their platform, right? They have these things are what we call I'm trying to look for the exact word that we call them. But anyway, it's design guideline, right? And when you work with multiple teams, then you want to specifically say, hey, guys, this is what you guys should use. We call it common library. So instead of a developer to rewrite this particular shape, the shape already exists. So it just uses the shape, like just calls like the function, right, where the shape is existing, basically. That's why we call it common library. So I don't have to redesign this thing that someone has designed. So if in the future I need to use this analytics in my page, let's assume this is insight, for example, I need to reuse something like this. Let me look for something that has similar. I think it's better explained if I see something that has similar. I don't know. Anyway, that's the idea of common library, right? Common libraries, there are certain things that are usable on my website. For example, when I click on this guy, there's a pop-up, right? When I click on another guy, maybe there's a pop-up somewhere as well. Let me see, there's another pop-up. You notice that the pop-ups are probably looking almost exactly the same. I think this should be a pop-up. It's not pop-up. All right, so basically the idea is there is a common library of components, we call it components, that we can all reuse. So when even if a new product is about to be created, we don't have to do the whole thinking about it again. If you have a button, we already know how our buttons in Meta looks like. If you have a pop-up, we already know what our pop-ups look like. If you have, for example, you notice that all the buttons look exactly the same. The only difference is just maybe the size and then the text on it, but the basic component of the buttons are basically the same. If the button is active, if you're over on it, it changes the color a bit. Let me look for another button that when you over on it, it changes the color a bit. I'm just trying to buttress the point of, as you can see, when I hovered on it, it changes the button a bit. Now, most companies has this common library. So again, when you build, have that understanding that this exists. I actually lost my chain of thought. But yeah, you have board. The board basically shows what is being done at the moment. What is the active thing that your team is working on right now? That's what the board shows. Calendar view basically just show there's a word they call it. See, I can see the sprint here, but I can't see the board that holds the sprints. It's very strange, right? Maybe because I'm using the freemium version, right? But yeah, in every sprint, you can see, oh, okay, this sprint is going to start from this point to that point, and then that's how we're going to basically handle it, right? So the calendar view gives you like an overall view of your entire project with date and time, so to say, right? This is how it works. Also, you have the list view, which when we think of roadmap, I really, really love this list view because it's easy to see, right? But when it comes to managing when it comes to roadmap, and I'm the only one that I'm managing the whole thing, like I don't need to switch to a user or another, right? I prefer it on list view. But if I'm managing multiple people using, especially during a current sprint, I prefer the board view because with board view, I can select a particular user on the board, and see only the tasks for that user and all of that. But list view for me works accurately well to get me what I need, right? Jira also has something we call Jira form. Jira form is used for data collection. This could be internal or external. You can make it internal or external, but it helps product managers for data collection. So you don't need to ideally go and create a system specially for that, right? So I can create a form for example, let me give you a case where this is very important, right? So you can create a form for bug, and then this form for bug that you're creating, you can extend it to your customer interface such that if they have any issue, they can report it directly, and it will create a ticket directly in your backlog. So you don't have to manually create it, right? So this is advantage of forms, right? And then goals are usually top level. I don't have access to it, but yeah, they're usually top level. It shows you basically what the company has as goal. The company's goal this year is to actually increase adoption to 50%, right? Or 100%. That goal has to be connected to whatever it is you are doing. So if, for example, I was showing you guys the other time, if, for example, you have 3 items, like KYC, you've worked on the research, you've created the ticket, and your company says, no, my goal is to increase money, not for KYC. If I do KYC, would we lose money or would make money? We actually, some customers will probably not use our system again for a while. The company can say, hey, don't do this for now, right? So that's what the goals are. And usually goals are usually connected to your epics and your user stories at the end of the day. Now, the part that I will come back to, which is development. Development is you basically connecting your tickets to GitHub or GitLab. I'll explain Git in a while or in shortly, right? Archive is works that you decide to archive. For example, I can come here in the backlog and then where's the archive? Split story is basically to divide it into two. I'm looking for move item. Okay, so let me do this. Why is it not showing archive? I don't know why this body is very, very strange. Maybe because I'm using the free one. But yeah, you should be able to archive your tags. Usually, I advise product managers don't delete them, archive them. Why? Because it might come up tomorrow. Today, the company might say, no, we don't want to go this way. But again, after a while, you say, I wrote this document, I did this research some while ago, and I wrote a user stories for it. And then instead of you having to do it again, you can basically just go to your archive and search for it. And then you have docs. Now, I don't think anybody ideally use their documents in this place. There's another platform, or so to say, called Confluence. This is owned by the same company that owns Jira. It's called Atlassian. It's just like your Google Doc, right? I have a document open here. And luckily, if you are paying for AI, they have an AI system that can basically write documentations for you right now. So the same way you can basically come here and, create a document. You see the way this document is, create a document, add anything, just makes it fancy, whatever it is that you're writing. You can create a document. And they have one features even now where it's called live document. So you can create a document that everybody can collaborate on. So for example, if I create this live document, the moment I type is already saving. So I can share this with anybody in the team and say, guys, I'm working on this part, please work on this part that is your own, right? So Confluence generally is used for documentations and all of that. So if you're paying for Jira, you sort of automatically have access to Confluence. But depending on what your subscription for Jira is, you might not necessarily have access to it. So understand this as a limiting factor. Now, release. Usually, we try to create a release to connect our release to the tickets that we're releasing. For example, I can create a release and say, depending on your company can have different naming convention. In the case of mine, or all the companies I've worked on, I think probably because they are in most of the companies I've worked with, where I've used this release function. I've only used it in the companies I've worked with in the Saudi Arabia region. In the companies I work with in Dubai and everything, we don't have a structured release process, so it doesn't make sense. But for them, usually there is a name, right, for your team. So for example, CAMC team could be CAMC release. Usually you have this naming convention, and then you have the year. So you have 26, and then you have underscore the month, which is probably, what's the month we are now? 07, I guess, right? So then after writing this, if it is the normal release, you can just leave it like that. If it is hotfix, you write hotfix. If it is accelerated release, you write accelerated release. If it is whatever type of release it is, but if it is normal release, that is planned release, you leave it like that. And then you can set, okay, which date are we releasing? 27th, and then we're releasing on 27th as well. Then describe what the release is. Now, the beautiful part of this is once it creates this release, you can then connect the tickets that the release have. For example, I can connect this, connect this, connect this. Let me connect all the tickets that I have on Barbot. All right. So I can connect all these tickets, and these tickets are here. So once this ticket is done, all I have to do is come, where's the release? Is come to this particular place and release, right? So when I'm releasing it, I can have automation part for it, but yeah, it can automatically create release note for me. Not necessarily automatic, but yeah, it can create release note for me based on, let me just do practical test. Ignore unresolved work and then release. And then it tells me where do I want to put the release notes. So I can say, okay, put it under software development, for example, and create in Confluence, right? Okay, so it creates a balance of what the release is. And here, the release is already here, so I don't have to add my tickets. I can just add a summary of what it is, the new features, improvement to existing features, or whatever it is. I already showed you what a release template looks like in a previous class as well. So you just fill this out based on what you've actually just released. That way, once you publish it, if anybody in the company comes and say, for example, this release was released, who released it, what did they release, they can see the release notes, and then they can copy the release, whatever information is on the release notes, and then send it to the customer as the case may be. All right. So this is how ideally we use Jira. There are a lot of other setups that Jira has that currently we don't use, right? But this is the basic one that you use. If you join a company, probably they have other things that they use. Yes, reports. The reports might not be very great right now, but we have a lot of reports, right? We have work item completion rate. We have something we call burn down chart. Burn down chart is to show us if our sprints are actually being completed on time or it is not completed on time, all those kind of information ideally. So this analytics or report gives you context into how well your sprint or whatever it is doing per time, right? Or which one of your team member is slacking, which one is not slacking, all those yada 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 yada, plenty yada yada things. All right, so let me go back to class and see which part I'm missing out on Jira. All right, so that's that about Jira. Sorry. All right, that's Jira. I've explained product analytics to you guys for analytics. So I told you product issue for product discovery and road mapping. I told you we can use Jira as well because Jira has goals. Then those goals can be connected into your whatever it is you have. But yeah, I've showed you guys Jira, Amplitude, Productboard is basically just like Jira. Jira has almost everything that you would ever need. Alternatively, if your company cannot afford Jira, you can just use Google Doc for your documentation as well. That works as well. If your company cannot afford Confluence, if your company cannot afford Jira, which means board, right? You don't have board. You can also use Google Sheets. In fact, as a matter of fact, in the olden days, we use Google Sheets for tracking, right? You have a column that says to do, in progress, done, and then you use that to track what item is done. But it's so archaic and it doesn't give you you have to be technical to have analytics out of it and all those things. But with this, it's easy to work on or work with. All right, so this is ideally what Jira looks like. Now, aside from Jira, do we have platforms that do this effortlessly? Yes, we have platforms. The first one I ever used in my career or in my life is ClickUp, right? ClickUp. The first one I ever used in my entire career as a product manager is ClickUp, and I really enjoyed ClickUp. In fact, enjoy is an understatement. I love ClickUp because ClickUp is just, ClickUp is a babe. I don't know how to explain it. ClickUp is just a bay, right? ClickUp has literally everything you could ever think of, right? Just like Jira, it also has boards. It also has. You can also create items. You also have. Do you understand? It has everything. Come to even think of it, ClickUp is so good that it has direct messaging, so you can basically use it for your messaging. Like I can use it to chat people up without necessarily going to. So if my company wants to use just ClickUp for our entire work, we can use it for entire work. So we don't have to subscribe to Slack or to Google Doc or to whatever. Sorry, I said Google Doc, to Teams, to all these other platforms that we use. So I can basically even do use. I can also call within it, inside of it. I can call Flourish, call any other person I want to call. It basically works like think of Lovable as Baba. Sorry. Think of I say Lovable. Think of ClickUp as like a whole ecosystem for your team to thrive, right? Imagine all your team's system is basically here. So I can basically sync on a stand up with everybody. If I have a group for my team, I can do a stand up within the call. And then while I'm doing the stand up, I can see the tasks that is assigned to this particular person in the sprint. I can see the person's calendar. Is he busy? Is he not busy? All those things as a manager, which makes work really easy for me, right? So if your company can afford it, I would always advise you go for ClickUp. I'm not a fan of Jira. Jira is extremely complex, hard to use. Sometimes Jira messes up your entire life just because you need one setting, right? It's messy. But platforms like ClickUp make life really easy for you eventually. So, but like I said, Jira and ClickUp are not necessarily the only one. There are a lot of them. There's Asana. There's plenty of them. But for most top used in the industry, you have Jira, and then when I say Jira, I mean the entire Atlassian suite, because Atlassian also owns Trello, Loom, right? A lot of that. Or ClickUp. ClickUp is actually very used a lot in the UK. In Spain, and some other countries like that, that tech is very, very tech is on the high alert, right? So again, remember what I started with. The tool is not as much as the person using the tool. There's quite a number of tools that we can use with our life. But what matters most is understanding why you're using those tools, right? Now, one part I said I was going to talk about, before I talk about how we actually do this, I wanted to go back and explain a bit what Git is before we now start talking about it. So, yes, let me start. So, version control. Version control is basically because your developers write code, right? They need to put it somewhere, right? I think I explained this earlier, but in a very I'll open a document. Doc. Okay, let me just use this document. What's in this document? Give me a minute, please, guys. I want to be sure that this document has versions. Yeah. So think of Microsoft Word, right? I want to put information in my Microsoft Word or in my Google Doc. However, I don't just want to put information there. What if I mistakenly delete a part? I need to be able to recover that part that was deleted, right? So in essence, version control is basically your system that allows you to put your information but tracks every change that you put in the system. So just the way that Google Doc allows you to put in your information like documents and all of that, and then you can track your previous changes. Like I can track all the changes I've made on these documents, and not just track, I can revert back to one version that I made like previously, right? The same way version control, that's the same way, like as you can see, restore. That's the same way version control ideally works for developers, right? So you have a version control system that allows your developer to push their code. When they push their code, it keeps record of that code in what we call commits, right? So every single change that you make to the code is referred to as a commit, right? Now that commit oftentimes is added to a branch. Ha. So let me explain what branching is. I'll try and see if I can explain everything so that it makes sense. Where the developer is putting the code is called a repository. In some term they call it repo. Please, if you can, write it down as I'm saying it to help you understand it very well, especially with complex stuff. So the book, let's think of it like we're writing a book, right? The book where your developer, right, puts or writes their stuff, writes their code in, is usually called a repo, right? So this repo is like, think of it like a folder where your developers actually put in their files, their codes and everything. It's called a repo. Now, every new change that goes into that repo is called a commit, right? So it's a snapshot of changes. So which means a repo could have 5,000 commits if you have changed things on that repo 5,000 times, right? So that's what a commit is. So if you hear your developer says commit, that's what it means. That I need to push the commit, I need to make a commit, basically what they are saying is I need to put another image of this part, a newer version of a particular code into the repo. Now, we also have something we call branch. Now, branch, you need to understand branch because it's going to help your life, right? So branch is because developers work on multiple environments, which by now every one of us at least understands, right? Sorry. Give me a minute. This guy is telling me to do something. I really want to show you that board view, that sprint board view. I don't know why it didn't work out. Okay, it's not make sense. Did not work. Can't find. Seven, see. Okay. So let's go back. Now we understand what repo is. We understand what commit is. We branch. So because, like I told you guys, we have different environments. You have the lower environment, we have the staging environment, we have the pre-production environment. In the case of one of us, we even have the what's the word now? We have the somebody should remind me. Yes, UAT environment, the one that these guys spoke about. In their company, they do UAT, right? So now each of these environments needs to be clean. I don't want the customer to have the change when it is not tested. So, which means that even though I'm putting this change inside the repo, I want to find a way to separate what is working from what is not working. So that's what we call branching. So when you push, you can say, okay, push this change on this particular branch and then leave this branch for what my customer is consuming. So you have a branch, you can have up to 3, 4, 5, 6 branch. And then each one main branch is what your customer is consuming. And then other branch can be connected to other environments, or you can use it for testing. So your developers can have a branch for testing. So they push their code so that they can actually test their code with what is actually in production. Now, there's a very big problem with branching. A lot of time, developers create branch on the fly. So at the end of the day, you have so much branch in your repo that it is now not maintainable. So best advice that I give a lot of people is we create a main branch which is connected. Your company will have to rename it into something else. With most companies, they don't use main because it's a security problem on its own. So they can use a name, right? That allows them to push code directly to it. So that branch, nobody knows what the main branch except your team. And of course, the entire company. So it's a standard practice across the entire company. Now, this branch is what is always connected to your live code, right? And then other branches is what your developers actually play around, right? That's how branching works. Merge, the term merge means that now I have tested on branch A, right? Now I've tested and it works fine. Now I can now merge this change into the main branch. That's what merge means. Like combine, like I'm not adding anything to the repo because it's already in the repo, but it's in a branch so that my production is not affected. Now that I've tested it in this branch and it works fine, I can merge it to the main branch so that my customers can have access to it, right? Now, pull request is ideally a developer asking that, hey, guys, this is the code I've written. Can you please approve it so that I can merge it to a branch? Now, why is pull request very important? Most companies don't really do pull requests as much, like because some platforms like GitHub require it. So when you do pull request, they automatically just merge it. But pull request allows companies to put guardrails. They allow companies to put security behind their request. So before you, for example, in my company, before you can merge your changes to any branch, people within the your other developer, at least two of your team member must review that code or that change before you're able to even merge that pull request, right? So again, this is what pull request is. You as a developer, you raise a request and say, hey guys, I want to merge this to a branch. And then the guys will check it and say, Baba, if you merge this thing, it will affect my code. Oh. And say, oh, okay, let me just change it. Then they make the change and then you approve it for them to merge it. Now, branches, another term that you need to understand is also conflict. Conflict is when a particular pull request that you've made has something that will, okay, how do I explain it? Say, for example, I'll use it in human terminology. Say, for example, your daddy says, sit down there, and then your mommy say, stand up, right? That's conflict. Why? Because the same resource, you, that they are saying sit down and stand up, cannot do the same thing at the same time. So usually, if developer A already push a code and developer B wants to add his own code, whatever they are putting must not conflict with the object in the equation or function in the equation. That's what conflict is. When two branches are basically trying to edit the same line in a different way, especially when it's comes in contact with maybe library functions, all of that. If you're trying to update the same thing in a different way, it creates a conflict. Now, what is cloning? Cloning means that you are downloading the exact, like everything, all the code that the person has pushed in their repo. I've explained what repo is now, so you understand. Now, cloning means that as a developer, I am downloading the repo with the history. So I'm downloading the repo, but also with the history. So I have the entire change that has happened on that repo, right? So that's why most companies disable cloning. You cannot clone their whatever it is. Of course, you can do push and pull, but you cannot necessarily clone, or you can download the code itself. But cloning comes with the entire history of the code base, right? Now, push and pull, obviously, push basically mean you are pushing your code into the local, into the repo. And then pull basically means that you are trying to download other commits in your local repository so that you can actually push it to, what do they call them? To the repo, right? Again, so that both of them will be the same. So usually when you are changing, for example, when you are writing code, sometimes your other developer has already gone to push their own code. So when you want to push your own code, you have to first do a pull. It's a standard practice. First do a pull in the repo to be sure that the version you now have is the updated version in the GitHub repo itself, right? By now, you already, I said GitHub repo, you already know what repo is. So this is ideally how we use version control, right? Again, going around, repo is where it is saved. Commit is I'm changing something and I need to make changes to it. Branch is, oh, I need to make changes and test before actually merging into the main branch, right? And then merge is combining two branches together. Pull request is I want somebody to approve my combining branch together. Conflict is, oh, I'm trying to combine branch together, or I'm trying to add my code, but there's a conflict. There's a problem with my instructions because the instruction is affecting another instruction that already exists on the system. Clone is I'm downloading the entire code with the history. Pull is I'm trying to get the latest version of the app so that I can actually merge it with my own code locally before I actually push it to the whatever they call it. So branch off, usually, as I said, whatever main branch that you guys have as a company, always branch off from there. That's the standard rule. Don't branch off from any other developer branch that you have. Branch off from the main branch so that you at least have the working code to actually implement your code. This is for developers. Most of these are for developers, so you don't have to worry about yourself. I've explained code review, I've explained merge, and deploying is a different game entirely. Now, you can merge because of CI/CD now, right? Deploying is easier, right? Before, when you merge to main, the code is there, but you now have to sync your code to the live environment, depending on whichever hosting platform or data system you are using. You have to sync it. But now we have something we call CI/CD, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment. In some cases, it's not called continuous deployment. In some cases, it's called continuous. They D means something else, sure. But continuous integration and continuous deployment. What it means is that the moment I actually merge to main, the system will automatically deploy. So anytime, anywhere you hear CI/CD, it means that deployment is done literally immediately, not tomorrow, not next tomorrow, not right. It makes deployment really easier. Before, you have to go and manually do some things to get it done. In fact, companies used to employ people specifically for that role before, but now it's easier. All right, so there are two different platforms that are very, very popular for hosting your repos, right? One of them is GitHub, which is the free and the most popular guy, and then you have the Bitbucket. Bitbucket is used by complex companies because Bitbucket gives a bit of more control on your code, right? It gives better control on your code. Why is it very important that developers understand these things? So that when you're product managers rather understand these things, so that when you're discussing with your developers and your developers say, oh, I actually just made a commit, but you are not looking at okay, I've had you anything. Once it's ready, just let me know. I told you guys, this is one of the fastest way to lose your trust as a product manager with your developers. When they say things and you're like, I had a developer. I used to tell you guys this thing. I had a developer that when he joined, he was not used to someone like me, right? So when he gives updates, he just gives update on the surface. One day I just stopped him. Right? Guy, let me know what's going on. He said, oh, I will speak with this person about it. No, speak with me. What's going on? What's the problem? And then he explained, and I was like, no, this is not a technical decision. It's a product decision. I was like, oh, what do you mean? He's saying it's not a technical. I said, okay. So if you go and meet him and then you discuss it, this is probably what will end up, and you still have to come back to me. And then you come and explain back to me. We've wasted 2 days. So please, when this happens again, talk to me about it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you were technical. This person was always disregarding, so I'd rather go and meet. And usually, if the person is going to meet, realize that you're also not very technical, they will make decision without you. And then when they make decision without you, things might work well, but over time, you will eventually not recognize the system you are building together. They will recognize the system because they built it, but eventually the system will become a stranger to you because then you don't know what exactly has been done, right? Now, when we commit, encourage your developers, especially if you find yourself in a company where you have to, approve commits. Like currently, I am doing it only for the QA, right? The automation, we have a QA that does automation, write automation scripts. And then when she writes the automation, she tells me to review, right? And then I review and then approve and then, before she's able to commit. Now, when you advise them to actually add descriptions to their commit, so it makes sense. I'll give you an example, right? If you see this by Bitbucket now, right, you can see that every single commit, like this is showing, I'm not sure where I can see all the commits. But yeah, basically you can see the guys, right? You can see implement full backend for payment, blah, blah, blah. Implement full WhatsApp KYC, implement like every single commit I am making is explaining why I am doing it. Of course, this is a bit vague because I have a lot of changes doing the same thing. But yeah, this commit came with all of this. I think GitHub is a better way. I really don't know. Okay, I can find it here. Aha, right? So you see all the commits that came, like this was merged. And when it was merged, say, okay, fix security issue with Lovable. This one is added drill down and security issue as well. Added main analytics, blah, blah, blah. So if I continue like that, I'll see that every single thing that is merged has an information about what was actually merged, right? So this is a best practice, right? So you don't just merge stuff or change stuff because, you can. Not because you can. We don't do that. All right. So ideally, like I said, in Bitbucket, this is my project. And then my project has all of this. One of the things that Jira does is it has something we call automation, right? Or should I call it development? So you can say, okay, if I have a ticket, for example, which your developers will probably do, and this is where the development comes in. I'm not sure why my repo is not showing correctly. I've done it. I'm not sure why it's not connecting properly. Somebody help me. Somebody call it purple. See, I've connected several times, but it doesn't connect. Okay, I don't know. I'll probably check it later. But the point is, you have a ticket. Let's go to CAMC. Let's go to the board. Say I have this ticket now, right? I can, where is it? So my developer can basically create a branch of this. And then, okay, as you can see, automatically, it's already showing the name for the branch. And then they can take this and then use it to push their code. That way, it will automatically connect this particular ticket to that branch in GitHub. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. I've connected it now, Babami, I've connected it. All right, so it will automatically connect it, create the branch, and then you can then push to that particular branch, or maybe commit, right? Create a commit a particular code, and boom, you can copy this and commit to it directly. That way, it can recognize that this is the ticket that they are committing to, and automatically move your ticket from in progress to PR review. So once your developer also reviews it, finish, it automatically moves it to QA review. So one of the advantages of Jira is it has that inbuilt automation to help you with those processes, right? So you don't have to do it manually, right? Aside from that, really, I don't see the advantage, right? So I think this is the basics of Git that I feel like you should probably understand. I've spoken about release in the past. I've spoken about tags. Also, tags is like tags are like branch as well, but they are not necessarily branch. They are awesome. They are like a version of any of your branch that you want to push per time. You remember when I said, well, some companies don't use tags. Some companies just push their branch directly. But to be on the safer side, companies like mine or the previous ones I worked with have what we call tags. And tags allow you to take a particular commit, which has like the biggest version of your entire, like the most latest version of your entire code, and then push that particular commit to customers. However, the advantage of it is that when you have an issue and you need to roll back, you don't have to roll back changing your code or anything. You can just roll back to that last tag that you created that was working fine, right? That tag is usually saved somewhere in the memory. I don't know the exegesis of the technicality, and I don't care. But one of the most important parts, or one of the most important reasons why people use tag, is because it allows you to bundle your changes in a way that you can always go back to them if things don't go well as you plan, right? And I've explained what hot fixes are to you, right? That hot fixes are basically there's something that is disturbing Dangote in production and you have to fix it immediately, right? You don't have to wait for the planned release. Maybe your planned release usually happens on 30th of every month. You don't have to wait 30th of the month to release. You can release it today because it is affecting somebody very important in production, right? So yeah, this is what I wanted to teach today. The PM stack, and Git. I hope there's no questions. Do you guys have any questions? I was hoping my Jira sprints would work so that I can show you how we create sprints, how we complete sprints, and how we connect each ticket in a sprint to a bigger goal. But my Jira is acting up. But at least you get the concept, right? So any questions so far? Any questions? All right. Okay. If there's no question, and then we can end the class today. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.